Welcome to Be Well.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Nice to have you, Dr. Johnson Morgan. I'm Jonathan from Your Why, and this is Be Well. I appreciate you joining us. I'm very excited about our topic today, which is relevant to the times that we've been in and really this past year and all the twists and turns that we've had. But Be Well is an opportunity to have conversations with experts in their field related to living a mindful, vibrant, fulfilling life. And a lot of our discussion is about being mindful. And one of the things that I think about in terms of mindfulness is being in this place of stillness. And when I think of stillness, it is that present awareness in this particular moment. And this is going to be very relevant to our conversation with Dr. Johnson Morgan, because we're going to look at mindfulness in relation to how to ease anxiety. So as we start off, Dr. Johnson Morgan, thank you for being with us. Dr. Johnson is a licensed clinical psychologist, a mindfulness expert at the Halliday Center for Psychotherapy and Wellness. So a pleasure to have you. Really appreciate that you're lending your expertise to our discussion today. Jennifer, let me give you an opportunity just to share a little bit about your background and how you came to the opportunity that we get to have this discussion.
Yeah, most definitely. So again, thank you so much for having me. It's definitely an honor. I love the work that you do, Jonathan. And so just to share a little bit about my background and right, what brings me even here to have this wonderful opportunity. So I would even start, let's say, over the past year, since the pandemic started, I've had the privilege to be able to work with many people, families, adults, children, adolescents in different settings, from, private practice, such as like the Halliday Center, to the hospital, primary care. And so that in those settings, one thing that is pretty consistent, as far as what it is that I just noticed, again, especially over this past year, and dealing with COVID, is the consistency and concern about anxiety and worry, which, mind you, it's been a lot that has been taking place, that's been going on. And so, to feel anxious and to feel worried, and for that to be a common issue that I have been, presented with in these different settings, it definitely highlights the importance of not just learning about what's going on, but also becoming equipped with, knowledge and skills and how to alleviate, some of this anxiety and concerns that comes with, what's all taking place.
Well, to your point, Jennifer, I'm aware just a lot of the research out there over this past year looking at the pandemic and the impact on all of us. And this has been such an unknown, undefined experience and a lot of twists and turns to it. And so with that, there's been a higher incidence of depression and anxiety. From what I understand, typically about 20%, 1 out of 5 is challenged with the mental health condition, typically, and that incident has just increased during this time. So I know the need for services like yours has been in great demand. So if you will, how would one know if you were to define, anxiety and a certain level of anxiety, I would think, keeps us aware, keeps us sharp, and yet in a sustained way, that becomes more maladaptive and more impactful on our health. But how would you define that?
Yeah, no, great question. I even like Jonathan, with you highlighting that, to an extent, anxiety is definitely normal. That's one of the first things that I want not just my clients, but others who I may talk to understand is that anxiety isn't bad. It's actually a good thing. It protects us, in the face of danger. It also can motivate us to, get things done, studying for a test or being aware or anxious about, okay, I need to get my bills paid. So it's actually very beneficial. And so I can even say again, with the changes that have taken place because of COVID, parents having to work from home, parents becoming teachers, kids having to stay home and being socially isolated, being worried or kind of concerned about the newness of it all and kind of the changes, we do know that those are, triggers potentially to feeling worried or anxious. And so, again, totally normal. But when we think about, I guess, kind of understanding when is anxiety an issue?
Mm.
One of those first things is that, okay, how much is my worry impacting my day-to-day functioning? Anxiety is problematic, or can be, again, more of a concern whenever it is persistent and when it's excessive. So again, we like our anxiety. In some way, it's our own body's alarm system that we don't necessarily hear, but we do feel it. And it can definitely keep us on our toes. But whenever it is overwhelming and it is making us feel like we can't get our work done, or we're too fearful and we're avoiding things because we're so anxious. So again, kind of impacting our overall functioning, that's when it can be, okay, this is a concern. Maybe there are some things that I need to try out, some strategies, whether that's pairing or connecting with a therapist, or also just learning and doing some things on your own to see if that can kind of help alleviate the worry for you.
So I'm thinking about it, and I appreciate kind of that operational definition that you're giving there in terms of when it becomes an issue, and at that point in time to get additional resource or support. I'm just trying to think about, and in a given moment, something comes up, we're anxious about it, it may impact my ability to focus on something. But it sounds like from what you're talking about and alluding to, it's something that is impactful over a period of time, because there always will be those moments that we kind of move in and out, able to come back, focus, and move forward. And if you were to give me a definition, if you will, clinical or otherwise, of what anxiety is,
Mhm.
that would be helpful.
Yeah, most definitely. So anxiety is, let's go ahead and just identify it as an emotion. It is an emotion. It is something that we feel, and is something, again, that is natural, that in some way, and I believe I just said this, where I said that it is our body's own alarm system, where it keeps us alert and it can keep us safe. And in some way, it kind of taps into our ability to survive, where again, it keeps us on our toes, to be able to get things done or to be able to protect ourselves if needed. But as far as just plain and simple anxiety, it is an emotion, a complex emotion that we do feel, and it is something that can also come about a lot. Let's say when we're stressed or in new situations.
Great. I think I remember hearing something about like depression might be related to it past, anxiety is related to the future. I wonder what your thoughts about that, because often it's like if something hasn't happened in the future, it's then going through all those thoughts about what could
Mhm.
happen, what might happen.
Yes. Right, exactly, Jonathan. And that's what tends to happen, on what triggers the anxiety, or what anxiety can do. So basically, right, anxiety definitely will, let's say with clients that I talk to, a lot of the anxiety talk is around, what if this happens?
Mm.
Or you think about all the different scenarios that can take place. And in some way, I can also describe it as, when we worry, a way of coping. So whenever we worry, we're thinking about, again, all the different things that can happen. And in our mind, we are trying to think, okay, if this happens, this is what I can do. If that happens, okay, this is what I can do. If this happens, oh gosh, what do I do? I don't know what to do. And so it's kind of this cycle, this constant cycle of worry that we may think, or in the moment think is helpful, because we're trying to be thoughtful of everything, but it's actually fueling the anxiety. And
Ah,
and so ultimately, again, it can be tied into, again, what's to happen in the future. And so one thing we do know is that we do feel, or we can feel very anxious whenever, again, we don't feel like we have control.
mm.
whenever we feel as though something is out of our hands. And so that can definitely, again, kind of tie into that cycle of anxiety about the future, and what it is that is not predictable.
Well, a lot of us haven't had much control this past year, in some ways,
Right.
but then probably, we look at, so what do we control, or what do we have control over? But as you have shared, Dr. Johnson, I can see how there'd be this snowball effect.
Right.
What if this happens? What if that happens? And you just kind of just keep going with it, and even catastrophize.
Mhm.
It's like, oh my goodness. Uh,
Right.
so, so
Exactly.
so what's your recommendation? How does mindfulness come to play, to help ease that?
Yeah, most definitely. So I can say I'm definitely in my practice. I am what's called a cognitive behavioral therapist. So there is a lot of, for short, CBT work that I do in relation to, let's say, depression and anxiety. But one other skill or set of strategies that I also find helpful that I incorporate is, right, mindfulness.
Mhm.
Mindfulness defined is pretty much being in the present moment. Allowing yourself to focus on the here and now, just stopping and pausing and paying attention to what's going on again in that present moment. So when we think about anxiety, what tends to happen is that, again, we may have a thought, and we'll run with it, and we'll think about all the what ifs. What about this? What about that? And we're thinking about things that can happen in the future. But whenever we incorporate mindfulness, we are thinking about the ability
Mm.
to just stop our thoughts and sitting in the moment and focusing on, it can be having a positive thought about something that brings us joy or gratitude. It can be us stopping and paying attention to our breathing. It can be as simple as paying attention to our eating. So focusing on what is happening at that time, and also being aware of our senses that is a part of that experience. So what is it that we're smelling? What is it that we're touching? What is it that we're hearing? And so what happens is, just naturally, we don't have to force the anxiety to come down. It'll naturally come down by just focusing on something that is calm, something that's soothing, something that brings us joy, potentially. And so that's what can be helpful when we think about, incorporating mindfulness in order to reduce being or feeling anxious, being anxious, pretty much.
That's fantastic. I could see that that would be impactful. Although if I was to gently challenge you, I'm thinking, if I'm anxious about something, I'm in this free fall of being anxious, and then I'm meant to stop, think of something pleasant. I'm just, it sounds like that would take some training, exposure, experience to be able to get to that. And you probably do that in sessions, or practice that in some way with an individual.
Yes, most definitely. So mindfulness, it sounds simple or it sounds easy. Or let's say I'll have a patient come in and I'll mention mindfulness. Oh, I know what that is. I've tried that. I sat there and I've thought and I've listened, and it doesn't help. And so of course I'll then ask, well, how many times have you practiced this? And who were you maybe practicing it with? How did you learn about it? And so, right, it comes down to practice. I like to really challenge others by saying, anything that we are good at or that we can become better at, it takes practice, whether that is a sport, whether that is even preparing for a test. You are repeating something in order to be better at it. So mindfulness is definitely a practice, meaning the effects of it just does not happen by using it once or twice, but it does take some time of using it regularly. I usually prefer for patients to practice this every day, because it is something that you can incorporate whether you're driving or you're at work or you're at home. And it doesn't have to be 30 minutes. It can be a couple minutes, but the more that you incorporate it into your day and you're practicing it for some time, the better you become at it. And then you will see more of the results when it comes to the effects of it and how quickly you can recover from feeling anxious about something, but being able to take a pause and think about it before making a choice or responding to what's going on.
That's a great example, Jennifer, because I just think about uh, here at the Y, we have people that train, that work out, that swim. And it's like if someone got in the pool to swim and it's their first time swimming, I wouldn't think, be that efficient at it. But the more they swim, the more they practice, same thing in the facility with cycling or weight training. It's like flexing a muscle from what you're saying. And the more you do that, the more refined the skill and the muscles are. And I love that it's a practice, because then you're training, so to speak, your mind, your body.
Yep. Spot on, spot on. I echo everything that you just shared. And so again, that's pretty much the key. Practice is always the key. And so if it's something that we want to see better, such as our ability to alleviate ourselves, to calm ourselves down, then we have to practice the skill in order to see those results. Some things just do not change overnight. Some things do, but other things do not.
So if I was to reiterate what I heard you say, is that in those moments that we're anxious, you want to find methods that work for us to be present, whether that, as you said, focusing on your breath, focusing on what you're eating, focusing on what you're doing, and just attending to that moment. And that does take practice. A lot of us think, oh, I'm present. But we kind of, wow, how did I drive home? I don't remember even getting from here to there. It just happened. And
Yeah.
so I could see that does take a practice, a regular practice, so that you have that skill available.
Most definitely. And one thing that I sometimes highlight, to others again, is the parallel between how we feel and what we are surrounded or what we're thinking, what's going on. So let's just say, again, with us speaking on anxiety, we have recurring kind of ongoing thoughts that's happening, or worries. The more that we worry and the more that we're thinking about that, the more anxious we're going to feel, even if it's our even if we're trying to tell ourselves it's going to be okay, but what if this happens? Okay, well, I'm going to do that. Your body is going to respond as if it is actually something potentially threatening or dangerous. And so you're going to still feel those anxiety symptoms. So whenever we are able to, again, take a pause and be present in the moment, just naturally anxiety is going to come down, because what we're focusing on again is more calm for us. So you have to think about, again, the parallel of the two. So what it is we're focusing on, if it's something that is not threatening or dangerous, but calming, our anxiety is definitely going to alleviate and come down for us.
That's wonderful. As you shared that, it brought up a question for me, and I don't know if I've ever thought of it before. It's like, we don't necessarily give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. Something's coming up. Oh, I've got the skills, resources. It'll just be fine. We typically, I'm wondering, go to more of the fear, anxiety, the what ifs, and I don't know if that's a survival skill that is part of humanity that we always prepare for, and then hope for, but prepare for the worst. But it's like we explore all of those potential risks, and that's what kind of creates that anxious sense.
Yeah, most definitely. Again, is in some way I like to again kind of put it in the category of like our way of surviving, where we just naturally respond to things, and we do that, or when we do that. One thing I'm going to do really quickly. I'm sort of a visual person, Jonathan.
Great.
So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use my fingers here. So you may be familiar with this, but going also a little bit into, what's called the cognitive behavioral triangle. I show this triangle a lot because it demonstrates the connection between our mind, so our thoughts, our emotions, that's right here in this corner, and then our behavior and how they are closely tied to one another. And so whenever we make a change in one of those three areas is going to affect the other. So let's just say if we are thinking or having automatic kind of negative thoughts or anxious thoughts is definitely going to affect, let's say, our behavior, where we may avoid things. And then of course, like I said, this is the area for emotions. So of course, we're feeling very anxious. And so what we want to do, or again, with it kind of just being natural for these three areas to be connected to one another, we want to be mindful of what it is that we can do, such as, again, talking about mindfulness, and that will be even considered, let's say, something that we can do with our thoughts, that can help improve, again, how we're feeling in this area of anxiety, as well as what we're doing, where we're taking a second to pause, to relax, not run. If there is something dangerous, or I'm sorry, something not dangerous, that we are maybe naturally, or not naturally, but could be perceiving as threatening when it's not. So I like to, again, like to bring up kind of like that triangle and kind of explain like the connection between those three areas, and how it's just natural for us, for those three things to be connected to one another. And so how we can take control ultimately by implementing, again, certain strategies to help with our thoughts as well as with our behavior to impact our mood or how we're feeling, such as with anxiety.
That's great. I'm a visual person too, so I do appreciate that, just in the sense of being able to see the interrelatedness, and also as you did that, I just see that as a building block for us in terms of how we can intervene. I know you wanted to offer an experience, so I will let you, with that wise owl behind you. Uh, I will let you share. I'll let you share your experience with us.
Yeah, most definitely. So, one of the things that, right, I would love to do is a quick mindfulness exercise with you. And so, Jonathan, I'm going to use you. If
Wow.
you are okay with that,
Sure.
and practicing or kind of just demonstrating how mindfulness can be implemented and how it's something that we can do again every day. That doesn't take long at all. So what I'm going to do is, right, I'm actually going to ask you, Jonathan, to think about something that brings worry right now. I want you to second to think about something that can create feelings of anxiety, that can just not make you feel, too good, but just pretty anxious. So I'm gonna give you a couple seconds to think about something like that.
Great. Got it.
And as you're thinking, I want you to also notice maybe where your anxiety level sits, meaning on a scale of 1 to 10, one being very low anxiety, 10 being the most anxiety that you can experience as you are thinking about this thing or situation that makes you worry. Okay.
Great.
I'll give you maybe about 5 seconds, 5, 10 seconds. Hit that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So, in thinking about again where your anxiety sits, or maybe your worry right now, and thinking about that, now I want to shift your attention to, let's say, Mr. Owl, who is sitting right here behind me, and I'm going to actually kind of scoot over a little bit so that I'm not your attention, but your attention is sitting right here on Mr. Owl. Okay. And so, as you're looking at this owl, I want you to kind of just notice the colors of what you see in that painting. I want you to imagine what the owl may sound like. What does it look like? What would it feel like to touch the flowers in that picture? What would it feel like to touch the owl? What would he smell like? Okay, and I want you to put your full attention on exactly what is in front of you. Okay, so we're being present in what it is that we are observing and what we are looking at in this painting. Okay. And one thing that may happen whenever we are practicing the concept of mindfulness and being present in the moment is that we may have some thoughts or our mind may wander to where we may think about something else. So what I want you to do is not reject the thought, those different thoughts that may come in, but just put it to the side gently, recognize that the thought is there, but redirect your attention to the painting and the owl. Okay. Don't force any thoughts away that may come up in this moment, but just sit it to the back of your mind by just focusing or refocusing back on the photo, on the painting. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is re-enter with you. All right. And now, Jonathon, what I want you to do is take note of where your number is, as far as where it was at the beginning, whenever you were only thinking about that or having that anxious thought or worry. And now I want you to think about where your number is now that you have focused or refocused your attention by being in the present moment, by looking, just simply looking at that painting. Would you say that there is a difference in where your anxiety number was when you first thought about or had the anxious thought to coming down, being in the present moment and staring at the painting?
I would say, Jennifer, I'm a very good student. So I respond well to direction. Uh, the level of angst, so to speak, diminished greatly, really just dissipated. And it was really kind of just allowing myself to be with that experience. It's interesting that I saw the owl before you introduced the owl into
Yeah.
and just you have a very inducting voice for this process, so that's helpful, and it allowed me really to kind of immerse in the experience, and it took me into kind of hiking, wildflowers. The owl actually became a Rorschach for me, where I could actually see kind of like two bunnies.
Oh, yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
very disarming, very endearing, and really just grounding, where the anxiety provoking event just really kind of wasn't significant.
Yeah, most definitely. One of the things that I really love doing in the office. So when we're together, or even I've, in the times of COVID, had to do it through Zoom, but I actually have, clients either lie down or we really take that time, even like, let's say beyond 5 minutes, to really sit in the moment, in the present moment, and bring that anxiety down that they may be experiencing after speaking about what worries them during an entire session, but ending on mindfulness. And so one thing again about mindfulness, the great thing about it is that you do not have to be in the therapy office. You don't have to be with a therapist. It can be something as simple as, let's say, if you are cooking or if you're watching television and something comes up in your mind that triggers your anxiety response, your fear response, or just make you worry, you can most definitely shift or take control of your mind by shifting your attention to what you are actually doing. So if, again, let's say you're cooking, pay attention or focus and be in the present moment of what it is that you're doing with your hands, what you're smelling, kind of using your senses to bring you into the moment of what's going on. And so what happens again is that anxiety that just maybe tried to shoot up, it comes down because you are focusing on something that is the opposite of maybe that issue or concern that comes to mind.
Yeah, it's like it competes with it. Dr. Johnson Morgan, you and I could probably talk for a lot longer and do more of these exercises, which would be helpful for me. And I can actually even see from this experience that I could probably bring back that image of the owl and that experience just in my own practice, because it provided a certain grounding and calm. But Dr. Johnson Morgan, thank you so much. You've given us some great resources and ways that we can be present and mindful and start our practice. So
yeah, most definitely. It was a pleasure.
and how can we get to you if someone's interested in following up? I
Yeah.
don't know if we have a slide with your information, but if you want to share like an email or a contact number, there we go.
Thank you. Yep, that is it right there. You can definitely contact me. Again, I am at the Holiday Center for Psychotherapy and Wellness and Psychotherapy. I'm sorry. And so you can definitely reach me. As far as the email, I believe that is something is that something that I could share with you, Jonathan, after the session? So I am working on that with the Holiday Center. So I don't have that direct email just yet, but that's something I can pass along to you.
Wonderful. And then when we get up the recording of our session, we'll have it attached to that then.
Sounds great.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Johnson Morgan, thank you for being with us today. Really a pleasure, and greatly enjoyed the whole experience. So thank you. And everyone else, please be well until we gather again.
Yep, same here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.